fallen into three categories: swashbucklers in the athletic tradition of the first Douglas Fairbanks, film idle turns with a heavily scented feeling of all the Valentino vehicles, and breezy comedies of the sort that William Haynes had made his own province until his premature retirement from the screen. We are not quibbling over comparisons. Tyrone was far more romantic than Fairbanks, a much better actor than Valentino, and less brash and cocky than Haynes. But he had been assigned really strong properties on only a handful of occasions, pleasing and holding the loyalty of vast numbers of fans who cared little about the nuances of fine acting held first priority at 20th Century Fox. Tyrone had been held in check by box office concerns. There was a delicate line in every dramatic exchange he could not cross on the screen. Rage could only go so far. Passion had to be bridled after a point. Sarcasm had to be projected fleetingly, since any hint that it was ingrained in the Power character would alienate the audience. So he had not made the final leap from thoroughly professional leading man to great actor. He was not invited, as Olivier had been, to skip from Dreiser's Sister Carrie to his own version of Richard III, and then to John Osborne's The Entertainer, the latter film of the successful play which Tyrone had seen before his death. Archie Rice was a character Tyrone felt he could play well. Olivier was his idol, someone who had reached heights he aspired to, and in whose presence in London and occasionally in California, Tyrone felt both humble and exalted. Tyrone would have liked to become the American Olivier. He had the craft, the dash, the voice. That would have been his natural place in the American theater as heir to a name that went back to the earliest years of the 19th century. But try as he would, he could not turn his back on the idol business, and all those years of being charming on screen and off had drained away some of the passion that was a prerequisite for greatness. He only came close to Olivier's screen stature 3 or 4 times during his long career. What he did have, besides almost incredible handsomeness, was his voice. It was, without qualification, the finest romantic voice of this century. For Tyrone, as he matured as an actor, that was a crippling affliction. For his producers, it was an instrument worth millions at the box office. Because of that voice and those looks, 20th Century Fox used all of the super hype they could contrive to churn up the fans. Tyrone called this the monster, and that button-tearing, hair-ripping creature trailed after him everywhere, even in the last years of his life, when his private and career affairs began going awry. He had hated the servitude impelled by his several long-term contracts with the studio, but they had sustained him through 2 marriages and divorces. His past follies were costing him more than his present, and that huge studio salary kept him extremely comfortable, the only way he could live finally through it all. What was it like to be mobbed by screaming women at every airport, in front of every hotel? Tyrone Power handled it. He was the coolest member of his party wherever he went. It was something his studio bosses had seen in him from the very beginning. Here is a young man who knows where he is going. We were only allowed to come close to the complexities of his private self once on the screen, and that was in Nightmare Alley, a film he insisted upon doing against the advice of his employer and nearly everyone else on his home lot. Tyrone felt that there was a great deal of hypocrisy in being a film star, an idol, if you will. It was a con game, and he wasn't very happy having to play that role day after day. In Nightmare Alley, he played a monstrous hypocrite, a con artist, and the honesty of that portrayal thrilled him. What was the public to make of it? Well, few moviegoers got to see it. It was sneaked out for 1-week runs at Fox's theaters. No massive promotions, no personal appearances. It was an indulgence on Zanuck's part. Darryl F. Zanuck, head of 20th Century Fox, and the man who took all of the credit for creating the most popular leading man his studio ever would have. There are few villains in this book. Tyrone Power was admired and loved by nearly everyone in the film colony. He had no enemies except himself, and even that came late in his life. He genuinely liked people and wanted their affection in return. He went to great lengths to achieve that. There were few displays of temperament. He was always up in his lines, always on time on the set. He was proud of his craft, wanting to be as successful as the 2 famous Tyrone Powers before him, his father and great-grandfather. But Tyrone was no paragon, a man who seemed to get his highs from falling in love. He had more affairs than any leading man in recent memory and consequently littered the Hollywood landscape with more broken hearts. Like a number of men, he seemed far more loyal to his male friendships than to the more tormented liaisons with the ladies. A loyal son and brother, he was generous, loving, and responsible to his family.